The StrutFit Show, bringing retail into the future.
Hello and welcome to the StrutFit Show. I'm your host, Nayyar. I'm also the CEO of StrutFit, where our vision is the same as the vision for this show, to bring retail into the future. Every episode, I'll be joined by a guest who is leading or innovating in some part of the retail spectrum, from design to manufacturing to marketing and even to sales. We'll discuss trends, learnings, and ideas, and really try to figure out what the top performers in your field are doing. Along the way, we'll discover some lessons you can apply to your own career and hopefully even have some fun. All right, let's do it. Hello and welcome to the StrutFit Show. Suzanne Oude Hengel. Have I got it? Did I get close? So yeah, as I mentioned previously, the premise of the StrutFit Show is to talk to people in various parts of the footwear retail process. So that may be from concept and a very early stage and idea stage, such as yourself, down to we had Martin with manufacturing and what that looks like, and then we'll have someone for brand as well, and then the retail side, e-commerce side. So getting all these different parts of footwear retail and sort of bringing them together. So yeah, thank you for joining me. I think our connection was, I first heard of you from Guy Harks.
Yeah, true.
Remember
I
Guy?
met him like a month ago-ish, I
Yeah,
think.
so Guy is on our advisory board, and he's one of the smartest minds I know in terms of enterprise selling. So he's been helping us at StrutFit, but he's also very into footwear and conceptual design. So when I saw you on his story, I was like, "Yo, let's make this happen."
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's all about connecting, right? Through Instagram.
Yeah, definitely. Instagram's been massive. But yeah, perhaps if you jump into a little bit about what you do, and then perhaps we'll go into how you got into it.
Yeah. Well, I studied product design. Maybe you start there. And I always was triggered by development of materials, and on the other side, applying into a functional product. And it happened to be shoes, recurring theme. And I wanted to investigate more into textiles. So I did exchange at Aalto University, where I learned like the basics of knitting. And from there, I think I made my my first collection, like graduation collection of shoes, knitted shoes. And then it took off from there, basically, through Instagram, through the next steps. Being part of like a traineeship, how is it called, like Santoni Pioneer Program? I think you would call it more of a program. So there it's Santoni is a manufacturer of circular knitting machines, and so they have this partnership where they invite talents to come there and to develop whatever they wanted. And they show you what the industry is about, and give you like access to their facilities, which was
Awesome.
amazing. It was amazing as a first step.
Yeah, and how do you think you got selected for that? Was that based off some previous work you'd been doing, or?
Yeah, I think my graduation collection, and just keeping in touch with some people, with the right people, keeping contacts. How do you say, like alive, kind of?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah.
And you mentioned briefly knitting and then circular knitting.
Yep.
So there'll be some people familiar with concept design and footwear design. There'll be other people who are just e-commerce and they won't know anything at all. So perhaps if we start with, what is knitting, and what is knitting in respect to footwear, and what does that look like?
Well, I think knitting is a textile technique. So it's compared to weaving, it's way more flexible, and it allows you to create shapes and engineer a pattern. Like for shoes, for example, it allows you to make the manufacturing process way easier. So to make a one-piece pattern, one-piece upper, I mean, and then engineer it with functionalities allocated to different zones, for example, or use different materials. it's just a total new approach to footwear. Well, it was at a certain time, but
So when was it new? When was it first
well,
breaking
I
into
think
the?
when Nike launched their Flyknit, I think mainly, right, and Adidas their Primeknit. From there on, I think it took off.
Sweet. Were you working on this sort of stuff before the finance came out?
No, I think it was happening a little bit before,
Oh.
but I was inspired by it in a way, and as well, it didn't hold me back like to do whatever I thought was interesting for me either, because I think there's still a lot of room for different people to do like what they do. You have like so many people that do leather shoes, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody is really like bothered by that. So I thought it's the same with knitting. And I felt I could contribute something by doing it my own way.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
it certainly looks like you are. So with the knitting process, because I know with say for creating leather shoes, you have a pattern which they cut and they stitch everything together. Are you saying with knitting, you can make the whole piece at once?
Yeah, they are like shaped without any waste material. Yeah. So it is different. So yeah, we were talking about flatbed knitting and circular knitting.
Mm-hmm.
So circular means that the setting of the needles on the machine are in a circle, and flatbed means that they are in straight lines. And on the flatbeds, you have a little bit more flexibility on the type of product you could make. So you could make like a flat piece
Mm-hmm.
pattern. You could make like let's say, a seamless jumper, for example, or you could make like a shaped pattern, like traditionally it would be made like a front panel or a sleeve of your jumper, for example. Yeah.
Right, and that's because they're flat. Because a sleeve would also be circular. How does that come together?
Well, it's like it's shaped. Basically, you knit more on certain needles than other ones. It is
Okay,
very similar than 3D printing in a way.
interesting.
But so with 3D printing, you just put an extra line.
Mm-hmm.
But with knitting, you add like a row, but it's more that you have to define what it does in that extra line. So you can do like a lot of things.
Okay,
Uh,
so and by adding extra lines, you cause it to perhaps curve and give it shape.
Yeah, for example, if you add more rows at a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
then you add more material. Yeah.
Cool. And
Yeah.
what is that? How do you actually? Is there a software which you perhaps like code it into first? What does that process look? Because I imagine it's not
Yeah.
hand knitting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it works like this. So every needle has a pixel allocated to it, and then you command it with symbols allocated to the pixel and colors, and then you build it up in layers. And for flatbeds, you have like two different machinery makers, like a Japanese and a German one. So the Japanese is Shima, and the German one is Stoll. And yeah, they still like the software with the machine.
Mm-hmm. Is it the
So
same software, or do you have to learn two
no,
different?
no, it's different. Well, yeah, it has some similarities, but you have to train for both of them.
And you use both, and are they better for different things?
Yeah, it's just a different layout, different setup, but I think yeah, if you know what knitting is and you have
Yeah.
some experience, then you can figure it out. It's just
Okay.
another mindset. I think it's for you as well. Working in different softwares, it's just different. Yeah, yeah, it's
True. There's
just
like underlying concept because so my background is software engineering. So there's
Mhm.
underlying concepts which you can apply to different languages, but in the end, it allows you to achieve the same thing. Does that sound about right?
yeah. Sometimes, well, yeah, well. So the machines that the machines are built like differently, allowing different things to be done. So that is kind of, I think, relating to what you're saying. Um, but yeah, the softwares are just built up differently.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, and with this various different hardware allows you to do what we're doing, what you call like concept design, right? And you're working on lots of different ideas. What does that, I guess, what does that look like, and how does something go from, say, a concept into a commercial product? That's probably a very big question, so feel free to break that down.
I would say like pushing it towards a commercial version. I never went that far to the commercial side, so
Mhm.
I'm almost more at the very beginning. So more the development side. That's where I work mainly. But well, let's see what the future brings.
Okay.
But
And what
at this stage, I would say it's more research and development. Yeah.
Cool. And what does that look like? Do you usually get companies coming to you and saying, "Hey, we want to do something with knitting. Is this possible?" Or do you come up with your own ideas? Like, what's the structure of, I guess, your work?
It's very different. Like sometimes I have companies that are attracted by my work and they want something similar. And sometimes they have like a new machine and they want me to try stuff on. Or they want new inputs, or they just like my work and then they want me to do something which I like for them and which like has the aesthetic and yeah, just gives like some, I think, refreshment in their approach. Um, how does it work? I think it is kind of first concept, then I make a proposal, and then we go from there. But it's like almost all the times that we change like the path, and it's like other options are popping up along the process, and I think I always try to work next to the machine with the technicians, or I try to handle the machines myself if they allow it. Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
say like Nike comes to you and they say, "Hey, we want this done." What does that concept stage look like? Are you just drawing stuff on paper and then saying this is what it's going to look like? Or by paper, I mean, online.
Mhm. Yeah,
What does
kind of.
that sort of back and forth look like?
I think Nike would never come to me for that kind of stuff, but they don't do it, I think. But yeah, how does it work? I never ever almost draw. It's more like putting ideas on paper so I don't forget them,
Mhm.
rather than really conceptualizing it. That way, I think I'm more like from mock-ups, playing around with stuff, and then moving from there, or making kind of collages or that kind of stuff. I think it starts really with the development. So I try to gain trust and just start with sometimes maybe almost nothing and just some kind of um, yeah, trust with the work I've been doing, and trying to explain as much what my plans are and the intent is. Yeah, yeah, maybe not an answer to your question.
I mean, it's just good to get insight into, what that process looks like. So you're set up as is it like a consultant? Is that technically
Yeah,
what you do?
I'm still kind of figuring it out, but I think you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was reading this article. I think it was on was it on Concept Footwear or something,
hmm
where you were approached. Was it not by Nike? Approached by Nike to,
Yeah,
and
you could.
then what was that like? And then you eventually decided, hey, I wanna do my own thing. So what was that thought process like?
Oh, yeah, I think that there was like going back and forward. So I graduated like in 2015. As I
Hmm.
said, I went to China to do the Santoni Pioneer Program, and just at the same time, I was yeah, headhunted by Nike, and yeah, then just started from there, kind of with them. But at that time, I didn't have like the skills of programming, and they wanted me to have that. And of course, my competitors had that. So I think it didn't work for that reason. But on the other side as well, I think it wasn't the right fit and the right moment for it. And yeah, so the job offers kept recurring from Nike for, I think, every 6 months for 2 years.
Wow.
Sometimes I declined it. Sometimes I wasn't a fit. And I think it's always like a guess when somebody proposes you a job, because it's a guess what kind of I know what my um, what I can do. I know what my capabilities are, but they're just guessing. They like your work, but they don't really know what your skills are.
Hmm. So
So
it's up. So it's up to you to see where that match might be. Cool.
yeah, exactly. It's a guess, and bit by bit, I figured out that I think it's like about 3 years, actually, 3 or 4 years, that my own business started growing. I just took some projects which I liked, and then I started a company, which wasn't my goal at first. I
Hmm.
wanted to do a master's, and then yeah, bit by bit, like bigger projects came in, and cooler things happened, and collaborations happened, and yeah, now I'm here. Yeah, I'm really happy with the setting I'm having now, and yeah, not really craving for a job offer or working within big companies at this moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm the same. It's but that's fine. StrutFit's going well, so it's all good. Would you be able to speak to any of these projects you're working on or have worked on and perhaps are now public knowledge? Um, Perhaps which were your favorite or what was particularly interesting or about them?
I think without a doubt, Construct was my favorite yeah, project from the last half year. That was amazing. Was a project together with Timberlands, initiated by Daniel Bailey, and it was, yeah, for the Timberlands we did like the kind of research and development, kind of innovation. Yeah, we were kind of the innovation team trying stuff. We were invited to go to their factory and just play around in their factory with the workers, and yeah, just collaborating with a big group of designers, getting inspired from each other, collaborating. It was
Hmm.
a very, very nice experience. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. And what was the premise of the project and what I guess what came out of it?
Well, yeah, we made like a bunch of prototypes, like a lot of iterations on the classic yellow boots of them. So for me, I worked upfront on the textiles. So I developed some textiles at the textile museum where I also work. Um, and we implemented it like in different shoes, trying to figure out the properties and applications. And yeah, so right now I think there are some of the shoes that are further developed and commercialized. So it's a really cool and transparent project, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Is that similar? Because I think I've seen their Timberlands. Is it the 401s where they make a lot of concept shoes and then they're also available for purchase? Is that similar?
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's the one. Yeah,
So that's the
yeah,
project, and you collabed on some of those footwear there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Cool.
I think there were like two editions, and I was on the first one. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Nice. Those are
yeah.
some good looking shoes. I was gonna buy some, it was like $400. I was like, maybe not, but they look they look
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I think it's cool to have like independent designers coming into a company like that, and trying yeah, to do their thing within the facilities as well, within their
Mhm,
factories. That's not
mhm,
something we have like in our studios, you know.
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned, in that project you were coming up with different, say, properties and, I forget what the other word was, but
Hmm.
what sort of, perhaps capabilities, what sort of properties and capabilities are actually possible with knitwear? Because again, we'll have people listening who aren't that familiar with it, so it's like, what's actually achievable at the moment? And then perhaps a separate question would be, where do you think you can take it?
Hmm. Yeah, what is possible? I think you can go from very stiff to very comfortable, from very thick to very thin. Uh, yeah, combining different materials. I think you can achieve quite a bit of possibilities and functionalities that are, for me, interesting for footwear. It depends all on combining the right yarns with the right stitches, structures, and putting as much in. Maybe an example, I will get some.
Sure.
So I didn't tidy it up, but just to.
Oh wow, that is thick.
Yeah, that's quite thick, huh? Yeah.
So
So
what are we? Wait, hang on. If we go back to that, what were we looking at? There was like 2 layers, and then there's a lot of
yeah, so
stitching between it.
that is like knitted spacer on a flatbed knitting machine. So that's one of my projects I was packing actually. Next week I'm going to Barcelona back
Mm-hmm.
to do some research and development on this. But it's like, just as an example, that's like knit as well. It's you can go quite thick on those machines. You can push the boundaries and so this is a research that I'm doing as a personal project together with a friend, Milou Voorwinde, and we research possibilities of spacers, both in weaving and in knitting. Yeah.
Cool. And so the spaces was I guess the lines between it. That's truss sort of pattern. That thing.
And
What's
like this comes out of the machine as such.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
That's
And what's the function of? Because when I thought knitting, I thought it would be like the fly knits, right? They're very thin, and it looks like there's almost one sort of layer. So what's the purpose of trying to expand that, make it thicker?
I think for me at first it was just trying and push the boundary, see what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be defined, to be honest. I'm thinking of some products, applications like maybe footwear, some kind of cushioning, or some kind of ventilation properties, or moisture management, or comfort. Yeah, it could be a lot.
Okay.
So it could even be compression. I don't know. It depends how things evolve.
That's a lot of different things that you can do with. So you said there was moisture control, there's compression, there's cushioning, and you can all do that just by selecting different yarns and knitting it in a different fashion.
Yeah. And I think as well, engineering the pattern in different ways. So you can allocate like different structures to different needles in a way.
What does different structures mean?
Um, Different structures, that would mean for example, a different rhythm or a different stitch. So with knitting, you have like 5 possibilities what you could do. So you have like a stitch that you can do on the needle. You can do a tuck. So that is like that's like, well, complicated to explain. It's like you don't make a stitch, but you just like put extra yarn on the needle. I think I lost you.
Okay, no, it's there'll be some people they'll understand. They'll be like, "Oh, that makes so much sense now." Whereas I'm like, "Cool."
Well, so you can combine different of those 5 basic stitches, and that is that's making like all of those different structures. It's all
Hmm.
in the combinations you make.
So there
Yeah.
was a stitch, there was a tuck. Is it worth just touching on what the other 3 were?
Yeah. So you have like doing nothing. So that is one as well. Doing a float. So that is like that you're just leaving your leaving a float on it. So you're not knitting, but you're just like skipping.
Hmm.
What last one? Hmm. Interesting. It might come back later.
Okay, that's cool. I guess you might even think of it in terms of the how you code it. So perhaps when you're coding a float, you would just code it a different color. Is that right? Different stitches are different colors on the software.
So for Shima Seiki, that works like that. But
Okay,
with Stole, like the machine I work more on is it's like symbols. Yeah,
symbols. Okay.
symbols. So maybe makes sense to show you one of the training things. So this was one of, I don't know, does that make sense? Like this is like the language.
That almost looks like knitting itself,
Yeah,
like
it does.
a
It does.
pattern.
It's basically like the top view when you
Yeah.
look at it on the needle beds. Yeah. 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 So that's the language.
So that's the stitching, and then there's yarn selection as well. Could you talk into a bit about what yarn selection is? Perhaps some of the different ones, some of the popular ones. I know coming out of New Zealand, merino is very popular at the moment. Is that something you're working with? Is that just hype?
Yeah, I don't know. I like from my graduation on, I wanted to set like a different tone. So I didn't want to make like kind of this woolen sock kind of feel that is often around knitting. So I went as synthetic as I can go, and as elastic as I could go, and with the brightest colors as I could find, just to set another kind of more sporty and engineered and more young vibe. But now I'm getting more into like even sustainable yarns and merino as well. But I think it's key for me that things look good. Yeah.
The things look good, did you say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. I'm like super aesthetically oriented. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any of those sort of like a synthetic yarn versus a more sustainable yarn with you, which we could
Mm,
check out?
yeah, good one. Ba-dum. Yeah, to sustainable. I think I. Well, this is like the color I fell in love with.
Wow. Yeah. Is that a fluoro pink?
Yeah. Like no, yeah, orange kind of.
Orange. Oh, nice.
And I think here, I think it's just the thickness, but this one is not that bad. But yeah, it's like too chunky and just very like, I don't know.
So that white one is a more natural fiber. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is not like the worst, but it's the one I could find easily. But yeah, yeah. It's just I'm too much of a designer, I think. It's
So
a handicap.
you started with the synthetic ones. Now you're moving towards the more natural fibers. What do you think? Why have you made that transition, and how
Well,
much
I
does it
just,
link in?
yeah, I just wanted to expand my horizons, like to investigate and to set up like a kind of database of yarns, and yeah, being more curious what is out there. So just yeah, set up partnerships with our yarn suppliers, establish relations with them, and yeah, just test things. But I think I'm more in the technical side and yeah, sport side of things. So it has to add some kind of functionality or has to be interesting for some reason. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what does sustainability mean to you in terms of the concept work you're working on, and
Mm-hmm.
beyond picking a natural fiber and yarn over a synthetic one?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a complex question.
We can break it down into smaller questions if
Yeah, I
you'd
think
like.
there is not one good answer. It's I think more showing the transparency of the steps you're taking and the difficulty of like the options out there. That it's um, I try for myself, for example, to not use glue in like the shoes or the prototypes I'm making. Trying to use like the bonding um, properties of the rubber when I make a sole and try to make it, yeah, smartly with that approach. But within the
So
end,
before we move on from that, what does that exactly look like? Because I think I read about this and I was trying to picture it. So is the rubber sole sort of forming on the bottom of the yarn, and as it like, what does that look like? Does it as it like sets, does it just seal into it?
Yeah, hang on. Hang on. Um, um, so here you have like one of my first shoes that I made for
Mhm.
Clarks. So this was around the last, and then the last was dipped in a bath of rubber, and like the rubber solidifies around it,
Mhm.
and then it was very early stage, so it's kind of like not super nicely finished.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of it as well. And afterwards, I fine tuned further the molds and made some other adjustments. But basically, it's like the last is in here, and then I dipped the last with the upper in a bath of rubber. Yeah,
And as it sets, it just bonds to the yarn and you don't need any glue.
yeah. Basically,
I
that's
see.
it. Yeah,
And it
basically.
is glue the, I guess, the worst part? I think I've read briefly about this, but is
Yeah,
that the
I haven't specialized in the topic, but
mm,
I heard that it's like not a good part of the footwear industry. So not a yeah, glue I think is never good. But so it's not like this is the solution for everything. That's not what I'm saying. I think
mhm,
it's just what I had, what was fitting my project and what was in my idea and at that point better.
mhm.
But I think it yeah, maybe sustainably comes to questioning your choices along the way. I think that's the first step. Um, yeah, and I'm trying to like orient it more and more every time I'm doing a project, trying to question people and as well yarn suppliers, like when I'm talking with them, like yeah, how is it made? What is the material? Or they say it's recycled. Like, what does it mean? You know?
What does recycled mean?
Yeah, yeah, like is it like sometimes they say recycled, but they just have like 30% of recycled stuff in there,
Mhm.
and it's like, that's not recycled to me. Well, that's yeah, it's not enough, no?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
There's a lot
yeah,
of weird thresholds and you can get away with saying certain things and it's not
yeah, right?
exactly what it is.
Yeah. So I think being a critic, if that's a good word, and yeah, questioning what is happening. I think that's a right step in the sustainable direction.
Mhm. And that
Yeah.
method that you've come up with in terms of bonding the yarn to the rubber, is that something which could be done at scale? Or I guess another question, a broader question to that would be, how much do you think about sort of things being able to be done at scale when you're coming up with new concepts?
Well, not that much. I don't think about that much. No.
Okay.
Um, I didn't have to until now, and it was never my intent or my goal to set up like a production line. I always wanted to be far from that, just play around. But uh, yeah, not until now. But I'm trying to consider it a little bit more. But I think the freedom is nice as well.
Yeah, so and almost like not having to think about that lets you, I guess, push the boundaries more. So instead of saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, we couldn't do this to scale," you'd be like, "It doesn't actually matter, and let's see first what we can make, and then figure out how to somebody else can figure
yeah,
out how to scale it."
yeah, yeah. No, but I think that offers actually way more possibilities to do it in that way, because then after you can narrow it down and you can like skip steps along the way, but having that freedom at first makes all the difference,
Mhm.
like all the difference. Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I
Interesting.
think maybe that going back to like how do you approach a project with a company, that's maybe sometimes why I really like having like not clear directions, just keeping the element of surprise, because that's gonna happen. I'm gonna bump into something and have like a weird thought of what if we combine this with that and driving like all the technicians crazy. And once the sample comes out and they see what I mean and it works,
Yeah.
then it's like, then you connect it, and then I gain the trust, and then like it's fine. They do anything for me, but
Yeah.
at first you just have to, yeah, gain that first step. But yeah, having that freedom at first, I think, is very important. Yeah, yeah,
Cool. So first
yeah.
they're like, she's mad, and then you do it, and then they think then you're a mad genius, and it's okay.
Yeah, you have to prove yourself. Yeah.
That's nice. It seems like there's like a community. I was having a look around and I saw Mr. Bailey is connected in with what you're doing, and then I saw you guys collaborated with, was it Takashi? Was it,
Hmm.
what was it?
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about that? Because that was cool.
Yeah, that was mad as well. Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah. One of those other mad things happening last year. Yeah, so we were asked, uh, yeah, by Takashi to make shoes. Yeah, he was discovering that there were like independent designers that found each other on Instagram and that were doing projects and having their companies and doing footwear development on their own. And he really liked that. And he gave us like a total freedom to do whatever we wanted. And we all wanted to do something with his work and inspired by him.
Hmm.
I think 6 of us made a shoe, and it was amazing. It was super nice experience. Yeah, yeah.
And those shoes, they were shown in the exhibit. Were they then
Yeah,
auctioned off? Is that right?
they were like shown at ComplexCon in LA, and they
Hmm.
were auctioned for a charity for education in the US. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. That
It's
was really,
almost it's basically a work of art, right? What you've created
yeah,
there.
yeah. I think it was, and I never thought of it like that. But and I think it was cool as well on a fair as ComplexCon, showing independent designers doing their own stuff, more conceptual things rather than like the last. I don't know what shoe, like the last trend or the last hype thing. I think it was refreshing for a lot of the people. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. And those six that you mentioned, did you know them already from Instagram, or did Takashi Murakami sort of bring them all together?
Uh, kind of knew a few of them
Hmm.
because like the Timberland project was before, like Construct. But yeah, I kind of knew them through Instagram, but learned to know them more through the project. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I see.
Yeah,
And now
it's
that,
a really nice small community. Yeah, or
yeah, I was
small.
gonna say
It's
it's a small
growing.
community, but where is
Yeah.
it? Is there like a geographic base for this community? If you're someone who wants to, say, if I'm just graduating now and I want to get involved in this community, should I be in a specific location? What's the best way to sort of get into it?
I'm not sure there is a location. I think I think it's more the kind of work and the approach of a person, like the personality and how you work and the kind of work you do and um, yeah, what your aspirations are in life. It's like all that we have in a way in common, and personality as well. I think, yeah, it's just I think it doesn't matter where you live. Yeah, yeah, I think in a way, yeah, Instagram connects us, and like just like keeping in touch with each other. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't say, but there are a lot of people in London, so maybe. No, I'm kidding.
Maybe London's the way to go.
No, no, I don't think the location is important. Not at all.
Is it vaguely based in sort of Europe and America, or is there people also coming out of, say, like Australia and perhaps China?
Yeah, maybe they are, but not like in the. I think mainly Europe
Hmm.
and US. But I think it's not a. There are no rules. I think it just happened.
True. I guess you find certain hubs of innovation. Like New Zealand is known for tech innovation, like really innovative tech, which
Mhm.
scales really well. which is weird because we're such a small country. But I think because we're such a small country, we're able to test things in a safe environment. And maybe
Hmm.
it's also the Kiwi mindset of just pushing and innovating as well.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so you do see trends, I guess, across
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
geographies.
yeah. I agree. I agree. Definitely. I think there are always, yeah, there are always trends. Yeah.
So speaking of trends, I guess which trends are you seeing in perhaps footwear and then specifically in knitting as well?
Everybody's doing it.
Everybody's doing knitting now.
Everybody is doing it.
Yeah.
It's insane. It gets crazily commercial and very flat in a way. Like all the beauty is out in a way. Like all the cool potential is out. Sometimes it's only like a picture that is knitted, and I think that's really sad. Yeah.
When you say it's only a picture which is knitted, what do you mean?
So because you work with pixels, right? You can like apply a picture. So because every
Oh,
stitch is uh, one stitch. So yeah, but I think yeah, there is way more that can be done on the innovation side, and like of course the big companies are doing it, but the smaller ones that are just popping on a trend, I think yeah, yeah, that's I think for me not interesting. That
hmm
kind of very very commercial work. It's just at the bottom line of like how cheap we can go and how uninteresting, in my point of view,
hmm
can go. But yeah,
and
that's
that's all
just
the sort of the sock knitting shoes that we're seeing. Is that sort of what you mean?
yeah. I think like what is it like a sock on a shoe, but that can't be good. That can't be good for your foot.
Okay. Is there
Yeah,
a way to make a shoe which can be good for your shoe and sorry for your foot and is entirely knitted apart from the sole, I guess?
yeah. I don't know, but I would like to see, and that's what I'm trying to do to push the technique further and try to make it better, and to see how much support we can give or how much cushioning we can put in there, rather than speeding up the knitting time. And like again, I'm not running a company like producing like so many shoes. I'm more on the development side, so that's more my part of the of interest. But yeah, for me there is like no relevancy to do that kind of stuff. But
hmm
I think there is room. It just takes a lot of development, and that's what people often are forgetting with knitting. That it's easy and that things come out quickly, but it just takes every step takes like so many hours of development. Yeah, yeah,
And once it's developed, so I guess there's you guys working on development, and once it works, then people go out and I guess you do the same
exactly.
thing.
You can exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Different end goals, but it's always no.
And you said it was you don't have to worry about knitting speed. So you're saying in like production, they're trying to make the pattern perhaps as simple as possible so they can pump out more volumes of shoes.
Yeah, I think like all the minutes or the seconds counts on a knitting machine. So the more uppers you can make on one machine, yeah, the better. Like in a minimum amount of time, the better
hmm
it is. So yeah, yeah,
How long does it take to knit an upper? I know there's probably some variation depending on, but
yeah.
like ballpark, how long would it take?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how low you can go, but it's between like 30 minutes and 20 minutes at first, I think it was.
Okay.
And I think it has lowered to, I don't know the exact things. Uh, but yeah, it has become lower, maybe 15 or something. But again, like this is not like based on any facts.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah,
And what about so what I'm thinking is in the future probably well they already started to do personalized design and eventually you could do that with StrutFit where you sort of walk into a store, they scan your feet
and you choose the designs you want, and you could almost have a shoe manufactured in front of,
Hmm.
well, you order it, then you go away, you come back an hour, and it's made and it's personalized. Is that something which is that most likely to happen with knitting?
No, not in an hour.
No, no.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe, but like I'm a technician on the side as well, so I run the machines, and I think like then my technician side is talking like I'm not really seeing that happening, but maybe I'm not a bit optimistic about it, but I don't know. Uh,
is that because there's a lot of input required by the technician to make a design come to reality and personalize it?
yeah, I think so, and a lot of things can go wrong.
Okay.
and, and a lot of things do go wrong often. So yeah, so which is not a problem, but saying that you have like a finished shoe in 1 hour, I'm not sure that's feasible. But yeah, I think definitely something moving toward that direction would be super interesting.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, yeah,
'Cause
but
then you're doing speed not for the sake of pumping out lots of shoes, but you're doing speed for the sake of sort of personalization, I guess.
the speed of
The
what do you mean?
speed, like the speed of knitting something and creating something.
Uh
The
huh.
on At scale, it's about pumping lots of volume.
Yeah,
But if you're thinking speed now from an individual perspective, now perhaps it gets interesting and not so, well, still commercially driven, but because of a different reason. You're not like
yeah,
pumping out millions of shoes, you're making individual pieces. Is that
yeah,
something
yeah.
that should
Yeah, I think that's really interesting if you can personalize it to one foot or to a person's like uh yeah uh yeah injuries or like needs. I think that would be super interesting.
Mhm.
Um yeah, but yeah, again, I think that needs quite a bit of development, and having a template for that, I think it's challenging. There are a lot of problems to be solved. Yeah,
Cool. Do you speak to, you mentioned cushioning and, personalizing someone's foot. Do you work at all with podiatrists when you're thinking about concepts, or do you go to them for ideas? Do you sort of
yeah,
discuss?
yeah. I'm talking sometimes to podiatrists. Yeah, it's super interesting having their feedback on and their and yeah and grasping a little bit of their knowledge. Yeah, it's super interesting. I wish I could work more with them,
Mhm.
um, getting more of the input and really doing a project like really together, combining the knowledges. Um, yeah, yeah, so from time to time I do. Yeah,
Cool.
but
Sweet.
yeah, that offers like a lot of potential. I think a
Yeah,
lot
for
of
sure.
possibilities. Yeah, yeah.
How about the my brain went in two directions. One is I know some podiatrists, and if you want some intros, I can make some. The other is I will go intro to one who's the chair of the Australian Podiatrist Board, who I'm meeting with next week, and hopefully she joins the StrutFit Advisory Board because that would be awesome.
Mhm.
But she specializes in children footwear. Is that something you ever look at?
Children,
Yeah.
not specifically, but
Mhm.
yeah, never had the chance to do something, but maybe, yeah, why not? Yeah, yeah. I think the colors I'm using would fit, but I
Yeah,
never
that's
really
right.
like specialized in anything or had this as an end goal. But yeah, not saying no to it either. So yeah, it didn't happen until
Always
now.
just open. That's
Yeah.
cool. And where do you I guess, where do you see yourself, where do you see yourself going in, say, 3 to 5 years if you have that? Or you just taking it as it comes?
No, I have plans. So yeah, I would like to just grow my technical knowledge a little bit more, like be very much of a hybrid between technician, programmer, and designer.
Mhm.
Um, do more personal projects and start a new company together with Milou Govinda. So it's going to be a company around which the name has to be defined yet. So so we're going to combine both the weaving technique and the knitting. So and really challenging each other to push boundaries. and going from knitting to weaving and implementing it in both directions. So I think there's gonna come a company in the coming
Awesome.
5 years.
That's
Maybe some
cool.
machines. That would be cool.
And that's going to be basically what you're doing in terms of consulting and coming up with concepts, but with 3 people and just at a bigger scale.
Yeah. And I think having more access to industrial knitting machines. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's essential. Yeah.
Cool.
To
You
grow.
mentioned, I think at the start you mentioned weaving and knitting and how knitting gives you more flexibility in what you
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah.
What's the technical and do you do weaving? So it's like first question, do you do just knitting and not weaving? And or perhaps let's do it the other way. What's the difference beyond just knitting gives you more flexibility? And then do you focus on one, not the other?
Yeah, I think I specialize more on knitting, but I'm interested in weaving. So like knitting allows you to grow like a shape, whatever you want, but weaving you always are stuck with the warp. So you will always have the warp and the weft. Um, in the structure, which offers like total amount of other properties you could do. It's just a very different technique. Which I think still is very interesting. It's just very different.
Would you have any examples of something which has been knitted versus what's been woven?
Mm-hmm.
Does it?
Yeah, hang on. Okay.
It's interesting. I'm seeing some of the colors in the boxes from your Instagram, all the greens and the oranges.
So like okay, so this is like a
Wow.
woven symbol that I made together with Eva and Carola, Studio Eva and Carola. So I don't know if you see it well.
So that looks like, is that like it almost looks like a shoe shape, sort of flattened out. Is that about right?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah,
bag?
true. That's true. And it's like an engineered pattern with different functionalities allocated to zones. But here it has to be cut out, and it just offers different properties. So here in this one, it's a total different product, but it is a it's a broken sample. But it is like a seamless shoe that comes out as such.
So that comes out of the machine exactly
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And is this woven or knitted?
This is knitted. Yeah. So
Okay.
this can be done on a on the weaving loom. No.
Is weaving just flat? Or was it
Yeah.
flat?
Yeah,
I see.
Well, that's not totally true. You can split like the warps, so you can make three-dimensional shapes, but it would be like most often like a flat piece like this. Yeah.
And perhaps if we could dig into what are you said different functionalities on the pattern. I think it would be interesting if we could like look at the pattern and say, what functionality does this offer versus a different side. I don't know if it's going to be interesting to other people, but I'm super interested. Let's see.
I will put it. So this is exactly the same one. It's just
Mhm.
like we have to work on the dimension still. So here, like this part is quite elastic, like the top part, or it should be. That's interesting. Not on this scale, but here this part is very cushioning, so it's very bulky.
And it's thick. It looks like it's a lot thicker.
Yeah. That's the purpose. Like the nose part is way more dense, and like this part here, yeah, shrunk quite a bit as well. So I don't know if you see there is a kind of like relief on it. I don't know if you see it.
There's a what on it? A
Like
V?
there is like it's kind of three-dimensional. There is a zigzag,
Okay.
and when it was flat, it was just like flat like this.
Oh, that's the part there between the lines?
Yeah. So this is like the unsteamed version, let's
Yeah.
say. And this would be the steamed version. So it really like makes more of a three-dimensional shape. Ooh.
Are you saying steamed?
Yeah, yeah.
What
Yeah.
What do you mean by steamed?
So applying like you iron a shirt or yeah.
Ah, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so there are some materials that want to shrink or have a different behavior when you steam them, when you apply heat. So there is some room to play with. Yeah, and to manipulate.
And they keep that shape afterwards, or do they revert after? Or I guess
Uh,
maybe it
yeah,
depends on the yarn.
most often yes, but it depends on how the polymers and how the plastics and materials are like transformed and yeah.
Would you ever
Chemically.
would you ever go back to like a yarn manufacturer and say, "Hey, I need something with these properties," and then they go out and make it? Is it a collaborative process?
Well, I hope I get there one day. So for
Yeah.
now, I'm establishing like the database and the partnerships, and then when it's established and we have some kind of trust, then we go to that direction. So maybe if you ask me in 5 years, maybe.
Sweet. We'll have you back on in 5 years and then see how far you've come. And you're like, "Yeah, I've got all these yarns which we've created. It's gonna be awesome."
Well, I think if you have a good story and a good plan, people are open to it. It's not like a yeah. If you have a good story and people like it and they see potential for themselves as well, uh, like without a doubt, yeah, that's happening. Yeah,
For sure. Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
This was cool. I don't have any other questions, but I guess if there's anything else you might want to add or perhaps something we've missed out, feel free to do it now.
No,
Anything?
I'm quite happy with how it went. Yeah, so
Awesome.
no further additions.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Thanks for joining us on the StrutFit show. I'll leave your if you're open to it, I'll leave your contact details
Yeah,
as part of it, and people can reach out, or they can reach out to me, and I can make an introduction because I'm sure. I mean, that was fascinating for me, and I'm sure they'll be listening and hopefully watching as well and seeing everything you're up to. And
yeah,
yeah,
that's
let's
super cool. I
see
was
what
really
happens
happy
going forward.
to be part of this. Thank you for
Awesome.
the invite.
No worries at all. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The StrutFit Show. I've been your host, Nayyar. And if you enjoyed it, if you found some parts where you were like, this has added some value to my life, then please share it with a few other people that you think would also value this information or that snippet. And when they like it as much as you did, I'm sure they'll thank you. If you're interested in what we're doing at StrutFit, head to our website at www.strut.fit to learn more and get in touch with us. If you want to get in contact with me directly, you can reach me at ang@strut.fit. Alright, that's all folks. Till next time, take care.